Hello and welcome to the very next episode of the Reasonably Priced Camper Van. So in this video, what I'll be getting into is the now full installation of the Voltanic solar premium kit, which was inclusive of everything. So in the last episode, you already saw me install the panels, and in this video, I'll be hooking up the actual DC to DC charger with built-in MPPT controller and associated kit. So let's get straight into it. Okay, so we're back in the van and I wanted to get started quite early today. So it is a Saturday. So I have got the full weekend to make loads of progress on the van. So first things first, it's currently reading just under 24 degrees in here. It's only 21 outside, but obviously it's still early. It's no, it's not. It's just gone 9 a.m. So as the day goes on, it's going to get hotter. So keeping myself hydrated, safety first and all that. Obviously looking to have this all set up so that I can have running what you saw me install in the previous episode. So I obviously got the vent open, the doors are open, the windows are open, but I'm keen to get the front pneumatic arc Air Plus Mark 1 fan installed, but I obviously need to do this first. So you saw me as well unbox everything that came with the Voltanic Solar Premium Home Kit. So first and foremost, I'm going to be beginning with the DC to DC charger, and as you heard, I did additionally order myself a 150 amp hour lithium battery from Voltanic Solar as well. So that was bought with my own money, and that's just to upgrade from what I previously had, which was around 100 amp hour AGM battery. So a couple of things that I've done as sort of prep. So obviously I've ran my cables from where I expect all my appliances, my connections to be, to this common point in the rear corner. So on this board just over the wheel arch in front of me, ultimately I'm going to be carpeting and mounting all of the equipment, but what I wanted to do, at least for now, is get this all hooked up, proven and tested as working, perhaps just with one appliance. I've got the pneumatic arc vent above me, which just has a light on it, so that's going to just be a straightforward test. So in terms of prep, what I've already done is I've got the connections already terminated, so just a very straightforward kit that you can buy from anywhere, Amazon, eBay or other places too. So you just get your little connectors and you have some crimpers and you just lock that down onto the cable. So I've just done that on the positives and negatives of both ends of this one appliance, so that I can get that hooked up. Then additionally, which doesn't come with the kit, but you can obviously buy from the same place, but I already had a 12-point fuse box for the 12-volt connections. It's obviously fused for each point, and I've just connected some tails that I had already, so I'm going to be running these to the battery when I get to that point as well. Just behind me, if I just move around, there is a cabled sensor which is going to give you the feedback on the capability, charging inputs, outputs from the battery, from the DC to DC charger, the solar panels, and that will plug into the DC to DC charger that has the MPPT capability built in, and there is the temp sensor as well, which you strap to your battery. The box actually came with two, but you only actually need one in my case because I just have the one leisure or auxiliary battery in this setup. Obviously the solar cables were coming down into the van. These are connected, not connected, but laid here ready for connection. And then because this was an ex-BT OpenReach van, it did have towards this right side behind the driver's side, you know, the full kit and setup of an inverter and a battery and diesel heater, so on and so forth. So the cable that's going to be my main positive from the starter battery is already provided. So what I've actually done in the corner, and I'll just disconnect the power off this camera and show you. So apologies for this, but we'll just move around. So starter battery just under this tray, as you'd commonly expect with the Ducato, the relay, the Boxer, and there's an additional positive cable which runs just under the floor and exits here. So what I've actually done as prep is I wanted to have a master override or shut off here. So one of these came with a Voltanic solar kit, but I did actually just buy an extra one because I want to isolate the solar as well, ideally. So I've ran the positive cable that runs to this isolating switch. Obviously this is isolated, and then off the back of that you can see the two connections just in there. So you just simply bolt those down, and this is going to be obviously screwed in. So the plan is that this is going to sit within my kitchen unit that exists here, and then I'll be able to just kill everything that exists this side to the tail end of the van, which will be the solar, the battery. All those connections should be dead, or it will be self-sufficient in that the solar and the leisure battery to the rear will just be functioning within itself. So I'm going to have a series of kill switches just for my own added protection and peace of mind. And then the cabling is going to just run down this channel, down the side of the van, and then come up into this board. And this is the board I was talking about that I've just cut and fit between the wheel arch and where the mounts for the Scorva bed beams are going to be located. So once I've got this all hooked up and working, that's going to be carpeted. The appliances are all going to be attached to this board with the cabling tucked behind. Obviously this is already insulated behind as well, so that's ready to go. So then when that's carpeted, that's pretty much this corner done. I may carpet the wheel arch, I may box the wheel arch. I've got a few different ideas about what I'm going to do, but I think ultimately I'd like to have the electrical setup boxed in just to avoid any kind of unnecessary touches or knocks for anything that might be under the bed or in the garage area generally. So I think that's pretty much everything I've mentioned. So let's crack on with the install. So really what I need to connect to first, once I open the side panel to this unit, so I'll just quickly unscrew that now. And you can see there's a number of connections there. Now obviously with the manual that's provided, it does clearly identify what these are for. You won't need all those connections in all cases, but there is perhaps it won't show too clearly well on this camera, I'm not sure, but it shows you illustratively and in a table what each of those connections are for. So I think what I'm going to do first and foremost is hook up the battery to the DC to DC charger prior to then connecting the solar, and I'll just pause at that point. So I've got my tail cables. These have already been terminated, as I said, just in terms of prep. So one end was already terminated to attach to the battery, and then I've just knocked one of these other connectors on as well to connect to the DC to DC charger. And obviously this is a fairly reasonable length cable. What is it? Maybe about a meter, two. So there's plenty of room to adjust your setup as you might prefer to in your own van. But what I'm going to do, because this is to the leisure battery to the DC-DC charger, I'm going to just use the cable as it exists today, and then what I'll probably do once I've got things mounted and positioned, I'll shorten these to tidy it up, re-terminate, and then that will be obviously a lot neater. So best thing to do really is attach this to the DC to DC charger. So I need to find my negative mounting point first, or connection point. Just grab my screwdriver. And so these are typically just organized as these are your negatives, these are your positives, and then towards that lip there you've got various connections. One is for the remote that I showed you, that shows you the diagnostics of the machine and what's actually happening with the power levels. And then you've got two temp sensors. There is an optional ignition feed, so if your van happens to have a smart alternator, it can take that additional ignition live, which then tells the DC to DC charger to charge not just your auxiliary or leisure battery, but also your starter battery. So in my case, I believe this Fiat Ducato, being a 2017 model, does not have a smart alternator. So although I was playing with the connection to see if it existed, I did a bit of digging and found out that actually I don't have one. So that's just one connection that isn't required. So let's get this hooked up and then we'll crack on with the rest of the connections. So all the negatives are obviously just ordered as a bank, so you don't have to actually connect them in any particular order or have them to a particular specific port. It's no different to perhaps your regular bus bars, which is just like a common earth point. So if I whack this on to the DC to DC charger now real quick, it just simply unscrews, attaches to the bar, you screw it back down, and then you've got your solid connection, provided your termination of that cable was sound. Okay, so negative is attached to DC DC charger. Whack in the negative for the lithium battery as well. That's just loose now because I know I'm going to have to take that off in a moment. And then equally, let's do the positive side. So this positive tail, just for added protection, does have an inline fuse. So if I crack open this cover, I'm not even sure what size fuse is in here, but it's not actually labelled. Interesting. I'm not actually sure what size fuse that is. Not sure if the green indicates a particular ampere fuse, so if you're able to let me know, drop me a note in the comments, that would be useful to know. But I'll leave that as is now because that was obviously provided with the kit, so I trust therefore that this is rated for the DC to DC charger, is not going to just trip, and can connect safely to the leisure battery that equally is from the same supplier. So I'm going to attach the DC to DC charger positive end. So this attaches to either the B1 or B2 connection on the DC to DC charger. So as I said earlier on, it's possible to connect two auxiliary batteries, so you might have them in parallel or series, that's up to you I suppose, but I've just got the single unit. So what I'm actually going to do is attach this to the B2 connection, because obviously this will be important for me when I'm looking at the battery monitor. There'll be a B1 and a B2, but obviously the B1 connection is going to go to my starter battery. So if you think that's always B1 being 1 then 2, 1 is going to be my starter battery, 2 is going to be my auxiliary battery, and then that's going to be how I can differentiate when I'm either using the battery monitor or if I use the app, which I'll show you a little bit later as well, which connects via Bluetooth to the unit, and you're able to get the stats on the go and within reasonable range. Obviously Bluetooth is a fairly reaching connection, and provided you're not too far from the van, you'll be able to check on the battery levels and the capabilities of the charging unit and so on, which is kind of cool. So yeah, so that's hooked up to B2. Fuse end, I prefer to put this closer to the power source. I believe that's the correct method, as opposed to closer to the item that's taking the power. So I'll just drop this positive end on the lithium battery. I do love these lithium battery connections. They're you know, just like an oversized screw, as opposed to on a traditional battery where you've got either a clamp or a 10mm nut to faff with, which is sometimes a bit of a pain, especially with access under the bonnet and whatnot typically. So that's now connected. So if I just bring you round, so you can see there we've got the B2 connection, which is the positive. We've got the negative attached to the common negative across that bank there. I'm going to, when I'm ready, connect the B1 connection there to my starter battery, and then you've got your PV plus, which is for your solar positive. I don't believe I use the external, or do I? I'll come back to that. And then I've got additional earthing points there, and then if I just swing this round, just along here is the bank of connections that I talked about. So this RJ45, which is like a is it RJ45 or RJ11? But it's a common connection point which you can just drop that connection in, which exists for the battery monitor or the unit monitor, and then you've got these smaller unit connections which are things like you've got the ignition live just at that end, you've got 2 temp sensors towards this end, and the other 2 I don't believe I need to use. They're labelled CAN or BVS, and to be honest I've not even looked at those because it's not something that I have required to know. So, but it may be in your case. The manual clearly explains what they're for, but not needed. Anyway, now that this is obviously hooked up as I've shown you, we're starting to see some lights. So if I just bring you round, so you've got the solar LED just on this side, which is obviously dark right now, it's not connected. You've got your B1 and B2 LEDs, and then you've got an external and your ignition live LED. So what I'm expecting really, if I hit the there we go. So if I recall from reading the manual, on these battery LEDs you need to identify for the unit's behalf what type of battery you're connecting. Now I know from already doing this that the blue/purple LED on this B1 is the identifier for a lithium, and then if I recall, if I go back to the manual, it changes to a different colour for the other common alternative, which is an AGM, so that will be green, which it obviously already is, and I know because I have already connected this just to test the unit out of the box. So there is a button here which you can flick through the settings to change those identifiers so that the DC to DC charger knows, okay, so on my B2 connection I've got a lithium, on my B1 connection I've got a traditional AGM, obviously that's your starter battery, and so these lights will give you an indication of what's working, what's connected, and it's just another checkpoint should you need to diagnose or troubleshoot anything in the future. So now that that's done, I think the very next step for me would be to hook up the solar inputs, and I'll be able to show you the solar capability then, and I'll show you as best I can with the camera what the app looks like, and I might do a screen share that I can drop on the side of this video a little bit later to show you what those stats look like and what you can do from within the app. So let's take the positive, no I'm not, I'm going to take the negative from the solar first and just drop that onto my common negative bar of the unit, and just terminate that down. And then the positive, which I just taped because I didn't know whether this would be carrying current, so I just thought safer to do that than just leave it hanging around in the van to make contact with something. So I just dropped my screwdriver. Positive then to the PV plus, which is the leftmost or top connection on the unit. And then terminate that down, and then straight away I've noticed that the PV LED is now lit on the DC to DC charger. That shows me that the MPPT function is working. Obviously the solar panels are mounted and connected on the roof. They come through the entry gland down to this point, ran through the sections of the van that I intended so that they'd be neat and tidy, tucked away. I just need to shorten these tails, which I'll do sort of off video just to tidy that up when I'm ready. So if I bring you around to the front of the unit once again, Hope you can see that. The glare from the sun isn't getting in your way. So you've got the LED that's red for PV, solar's connected. B1, that's showing me that the leisure battery, the lithium battery that I'm using is connected. And to be honest, I'm not quite sure why this green LED is on. I'm going to just check the manual for that actually, because it's not at all connected. My mistake. So when I connected this originally, and I was just doing a quick check to make sure things worked, I had the lithium battery connected to B1, but now I've switched it round to B2 because that made more sense to me. So what I need to do is tell the unit that actually B2 lithium, so I need to change that LED to the blue/purple, and then what will be B1, the starter battery, that needs to be changed to green. So I'll show you how I do that. So if I recall, I press and hold this button. There's only one button on here. Okay, now my B1 is flashing, but I need to move across to B2. Okay, B2 is now flashing, and I move this across by pressing and holding this one button, and then if I press this with single presses, it's changing the colour of the LED. So B2 is red, which if I recall is a gel, blue, purple, which is my red and blue, which looks purple, is actually your lithium 12 volt. You have a red/green, which is this one. This indicates a lithium 24 volt. Back to blue, which is apologies, I don't actually know, but it's abbreviated FLD. Let me know in the comments if you know. Back to green, which is an AGM, but B2 in my case is absolutely going to be lithium, so I won't have red. I'll have this blue. It's labelled red and blue, but it kind of makes it appear as a purple LED. So once I've got that to where I need, I just press and hold this, and then that's coming back to just a solid colour, which according to the manual shows that that's connected and that's normal. But what I need to do is attach, oh, not attach, sorry, I'm going to alter this B1 to be a AGM battery, so I need to get that to a green state, ready for when that's going to be connected. So not blue, it's green. I'll press and hold to save that. And that looks fine. Cool, so we've got solar input, we've got our battery identified correctly, and then what I'm going to do is just open the app, so bear with me in one sec. So the app's called Charge Pro 2, and what I need to make sure first is that this is connected, so forgive me whilst I just make sure it's connected. So you connect it to the Charge Pro, connected, and there you are. So I can see the state and health of the battery, I can see my solar input, I can see an external input, the current voltages of the B1 and B2 battery. Obviously it's historical as well, so it remembers the values from what I last had attached. But what I'm going to do is reset these stats, because I have switched what was B1 and B2. So if I recall, I can go to historical data. I don't want to disconnect, but I do want to clear it. Clear historical data, there you go. Confirm. success, and you can already see it's starting to graph different elements. So each of those coloured indicators down this side all indicate different things. So you can see the B1 charge, the B2 charge, maximum charging current, bank voltages, high and low. And you can go back over time. Obviously, once you're in the van and you've got this running for some period of time, you can see how the demands and the draw are fluctuating, and how the inputs from solar or running from your alternator are taking place. Back to real-time monitoring though. Obviously there is a temp sensor which I haven't connected just yet, and there's a value there that shows what that currently says, but that's perhaps a historical reading, I'm not sure, with a summary of today's running data. So you can see the highest voltage that came in, the lowest voltage. Obviously with the solar the voltage can alternate, if I'm not mistaken. And so that's the app, but that's just quite a handy little feature that exists. I mean, most of the vendors now are providing this, but having this at a reasonable price, as is the theme of the reasonably priced camper van, is definitely something that appealed to me, and I wanted to share with this audience that you don't have to go and buy the typical blue boxes that people aspire to. I think just because the big name influencers use these and it does this and it does that, if you strip back to actually what you actually require, it's just a unit that does the job. And this appears, from what I've seen and what I've read and what I've proven for myself so far at least, that this is perfectly going to meet my expectations of what I need and what I'm going to power in the van. And you'll see that as the van build progresses and we start to be able to use it. So I'll definitely come back with a status update on this once it's all connected up. I could just at this time go ahead and connect the monitor. So it has this, I believe that's an RJ11 connection, which is similar to the old telephone connections, and it's just an LCD display which you can connect, and there's just one port that fits in, so you just simply drop that in and then immediately it lights up. Let me just get this to the standard screen. So you may not be able to see that on camera, not sure, but it does indicate to me that there is charge, there is. Apologies. So my camera cut out for some reason, I'm not entirely sure why, but what I was just showing you was that the LCD is showing me that the solar is charging the lithium battery. Right now at this second I've got 41.6 watts of power coming in. I believe that's 9 volts, and obviously that will fluctuate throughout. Apologies, got that wrong. 41 volts and about 7 watts of energy is coming in, as well as it gives me an indication on the battery levels. So that's really cool. And I believe as well, once I've got the temp sensor connected, which again is just a straightforward connection, I won't untangle this right now because that's going to take time, but you've got temp 1 and temp 2, so I'm going to put this on temp 2 to coincide with B2. I think that seems to make sense. I may need to take a pause. So my GoPro unfortunately is overheating, so just connecting the temp sensor. Obviously this is just a metal probe which you would then strap to your battery once this is all connected and in situ. So I think what I'm going to do is take a little break, let the camera cool down. I'm going to plug it into charge for a bit, and then I'll come back with the next step. So I'll come back to you guys shortly. Bye for now. So again, apologies for not turning on my microphone. So what I was explaining in this video was just how I was beginning to connect the starter battery to the isolator switch, and the cable you can see that's running up to the seat there is just the positive end. Obviously it's disconnected at the battery as well. But what I plan to do is actually building a box around that front end of where the bulkhead used to reside, and the remainder of the cabling will be tucked inside the kitchen, where the isolator switch will reside as well. And as I explained earlier in the video, will be a
a first inline kill switch with the cabling running down the channel, then to proceed onward to where the remainder of the electrical setup's going to be on that rear panel once carpeted. So as you can see, the DC to DC charger is connected temporarily in situ. It's going to be mounted on that plywood board once carpeted in full, and I do propose to capture that in a clip later in this episode. And so we'll just pause for a moment. So I'm talking about the buzz bar, which I do plan to install later, but that will obviously be mounted as an afterthought. For now, the negative of the feeds will be going to, directly to the lithium battery at the back there. So it looks like I've got all the cables connected as I intended, which I can then run to where I'm intending to locate the lithium battery long term. And you can see, of course, the lights are flashing away, which indicates that I'm getting my charge from the solar input at the time. And there are different color identification colors which show the type of battery that you connect. So in the manual, of course, it does explain the different use cases for how many batteries you may wish to charge, or how you charge from a regular alternator or a smart alternator. And it does break down in the manual very easily at a glance how you can connect depending on your use case and what you have in your van or your RV or camper van, caravan, boat, whatever situation you find yourself in. I did determine that my van does just have a regular alternator, so the 12 volt ignition live feed wasn't required in my use case. Obviously towards the side of the bed there, which is just in front of the wheel arch, there will be a headboard located, which is going to be positioning the fridge as well, but clearly there's more work to be done before I'm ready to put that back in place. That will be coming in a future update as well. So I think what I'm about to do at this point is just begin to make those connections just to make the system live. So attaching the feeds now. And apologies, I can't recall exactly what I was explaining at the time, so it's a little bit frustrating on my part, so please accept my apologies and bear with the video. So just in the interests of helping you understand, so once this is cabled in, I do plan to connect one by one each of the remaining items. Obviously, I planned to test with just the light from the rear mounted vent. There's just a single light there, which was just to demonstrate that the charging capability was working, the rear light is working, and they'll all be connected up through the 12.12 volt fuse that I already shown earlier in the video. So at this point in the video, I believe I just had the isolating switch now all connected. Everything was connected at the DC to DC charger as well. Testing, confirming that that isolating switch was working and checking the lights. So as you can see, I've got the solar input coming from the left, the The first battery indicator there is for the starter battery, which is currently off, and then the third light there is for the lithium battery, showing that that's charging and present, charging from the solar at that time. Obviously, the engine's not running at this point, and so I think what I end up doing next, and I'm just talking through the different LED colors indicate the type of battery, and referring back to the manual, if I then turn the isolating switch to the on position, I believe what that will then show me on the DC to DC charger is, and with that green LED, that I do have connected a traditional AGM battery. That's the starter battery. So what I start to explain in just a moment is that using the single button, which has a play button on the unit, you can refer to the manual and then alter the type of battery that your DC to DC charger is connecting to on either point. It's either lithium, of course, or AGM, or it might be another variation. I believe there are gel types and other things. So I've got the tails there showing the 12 volt connection, and this is the tail that I intend to connect for the rear mounted LED light, which is on that vent just there, which I'm showing you on screen. So the plan would be, once I connect the tail end of that cable to the fuse box and present the suitably selected fuse in that connection, that will allow then that light circuit to become live, and I should be able to trigger the light to be on or off. And I believe there are, if I remember right, 3 different light settings for that particular fan. That is, of course, the nomadic arc vent fan. It's the 400 by 400 in size with just simply an LED. There is no, and obviously the blind and the fly screen, there is no other fan capability to that. And that for me seemed perfectly fine, because I do have the nomadic arc Air Plus version 1 towards the front of the van, creating that airflow. So coming back to the battery, I've obviously already connected up my positive, my negative. The negative is connecting equally to the fuse box, and the positive tail, it needs to also be reattached to the battery. So I believe I do get to that in just a moment, and I'm just explaining the setup of the fuse box. You have the common negative or earth connections to the top, and down the left and the right side where the fuses are actually connecting to the fuse board, these are your positives as well. And I think I'm just explaining at this point that once this is connected, you've got the LEDs in the center of the fuse board there, and the fuse light actually comes on either if you don't have a fuse present, or if a particular fuse is tripped, and that just allows you quickly and easily to troubleshoot if you've got any electrical issues going on in your setup once it is all mounted and wired in. If I recall, I was beginning to suffer somewhat from the heat of that day. It was just getting so warm in the van. The GoPro camera was overheating. I was having a little bit of a nightmare, to be fair, and because at that time, obviously, there was no connection to the Air Plus fan towards the front, which I do, of course, have that ready now and working. So when I'm working in the van, it just does allow that heat to be extracted a little bit more easily, which is great. So I do just have the Swari portable battery there. So that was just a cheap Temu purchase, and the reason I'm using that was largely to either just top up my phone, or top up my GoPro as I'm using it. I'm finding my battery doesn't last forever, particularly when I'm recording. So I do just tend to top up the battery of the GoPro in between takes of this video, or any video for that matter. So I think I'm explaining here that to the top left of this board, I do plan on dropping the DC to DC charger there. There'll obviously be ports to feed the cables through, so that will look a bit more tidy as well. I'm probably going to have the inverter to the center there, just above the wheel arch, which will give me the 230 volt feed for my kitchen area, and perhaps another couple of sockets. And you can see to the right there, I've got all my tails coming in from the various wire runs that I ran for the different services that I've planned to install or already have installed, and I've obviously number coded those tails with some blue masking tape and pencil just so I can easily identify them. So I'll trim them up, make them all tidy once that's carpeted and ready to go. So into the concluding part of this video. So you can see I've got the positive and the negative hooked up for the vent. The positive and negative tail of the main distributional fuse box is connected directly to the battery. That will go to a either a shunt or a shut off of some sort, or a another isolating switch. All that kind of stuff I can be adding later. And I'm just dropping in a simple fuse, which would allow that to become live. So just giving a summary here. So obviously I've got the feed coming in from the starter battery, the isolating switch, but for the circuit to operate, I'm not dependent on the van running or the starter battery. This is entirely going to be fed and powered by the lithium battery, which at this point in time is just simply being topped up by the solar input from the roof of the van. So just explaining that the tail is obviously hidden through the insulation and the channels of the van. It actually comes up that rear corner, just next to the opening door there, which then obviously then comes across the van to the vent in this appliance case. So I don't have the cover attached to the vent at this time. This is just me testing it. I'll obviously be mounting the ceiling and put the cover, the trim on that vent as well. But you can see there, I'm just flipping through the three different strengths of light that the LED offers, and obviously this is going to be the light that's going to exist over the bed once that's mounted and secured back in place. And I'm just showing here that once you do remove the fuse, and obviously it does kill the connection as I'm just proving there, you should be getting an LED there, as I explained earlier, that would suggest to you either a fuse is tripped or there is no fuse present. So that is just a simple way that you can troubleshoot in the future should you find one of your appliances is not working. So by dropping the fuse back in, which if I recall I do, that light should go out and the circuit become live once again. There you go. So the light goes out, the circuit is live, and my light is working once again. So it's just a matter of repeating the process of connecting the tails for each appliance back to that fuse board. And obviously I'll be capturing that in future updates. So once again, apologies for missing the audio in the main. It's a little bit embarrassing. I wasn't able to capture in full exactly what I was trying to explain at the time of recording, but I hope this voiceover still has given you some insight into the thought process, the considerations and feelings that I had at the time. So I think I'll just conclude the audio but allow the video to play out. If at this point this install was useful to you, then please do contact Voltanic Solar directly. Equally, if you've got comments, feedback, questions about the setup or what I may have done or what you may think you need to think about or do, feel free to drop me a comment. Please, as always, like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and I look forward to speaking to you in a very soon and future update. Take care now. Bye bye.